Hello and welcome to the episode of Battle Ready.
Woo!
Right, where today, actually, rather than talking about an aspect of Warhammer like we usually do,
Gasp.
today
I was not informed.
I thought we would talk about a potential improvement or maybe a terrible idea.
Such as?
So here's my potential improvement. One of the things that I love about 4th edition is the spell lores. Because rather than having each wizard take a spell, you get the whole lore, right?
Yeah,
and then on the tabletop, everybody can cast everything. And if a spell is like, well, this spell is really only good against hordes, and if you're playing Stormcast against Stormcast, it's worthless to take that spell, right?
Yeah.
So you end up never taking it. But if it's just one in a set
Of three,
you
have two good spells.
then you have 2 good spells, and then on the times when you're facing hordes, when those zombies come up, you've got a horde spell, right? So suddenly it becomes useful. And I would really like to see the same thing with artifacts, and maybe even battle regiments. Because there are artifacts that are probably really good against a very specific type of army, like everything within 12 inches of my hero that flies takes D3 mortals. It's like, that's really good against Night Hunt.
Caradron.
Well,
okay.
The boats. But if I'm playing against Cruel Boys.
Nothing flies.
Yeah, the Corpse Ripper Vulture. Yeah, what's his name? The
Corpse Ripper Vulture and...
What's the spellcaster guy?
Gobsprat.
Right? Or even Iron Jaws. All that flies is the Maw Crusher, right?
Yeah.
So because of that,
Maw Crusher still flies.
Probably it does. But because of that, you never take that artifact because you're like, it's not used. I need to take the artifact that's most broadly useful, right? And so these other ones are like, they're bad. But if I didn't have to choose my artifact until I walked up to the table and saw what army I was fighting, suddenly that's a super good artifact, right? Suddenly your artifacts and maybe even your battle regiments, they're like a little sideboard, right? You make your list thinking about, okay, what's going to be good at capturing objectives? What am I broadly going to be? What kind of things am I going to be facing in my local meta? And then the artifacts are like a little fine-tuning, a little tailoring you can do when you see who's across the table from you. That's my idea. Good idea, bad idea, dumb idea. What do you think?
Depend
on... Wrong, it's a good idea. No, I'm just kidding. Go.
I think it largely depends on what the artifacts are and what the Season of War is.
Well, yes, I think that's certainly true. But I also think that, like in 3rd edition, we get lists of like 6 artifacts, but you only ever end up taking 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Only 1 or 2 are good, and the rest suck because the rest are too narrow.
Yep.
They're too narrow, and so they're bad. But in the right situation where they would be good,
they're amazing.
They're good. So if you could choose them not as part of list building, but after you see what you're facing, man, those other unused artifacts would suddenly become viable options. You wouldn't take them in every game, but suddenly there'd be games where you took them, right? And so I like that. I like that we would get to use more of these things. Just in the same way that I like it when we get to use a lot of different models. I like the mixed arms thing. I don't like the spam stuff really. But when we have those mixed arms, it's because I like using lots of different stuff, and I would love to use lots of different artifacts. Like every time I rock up to the table and be like, well, this feels like a silver phylactery day or whatever. I think that would be really cool.
What artifact is that?
I don't know. I'm just making up names.
Okay.
And as a further point in my favor, that's how you do it in Spearhead, right? You roll for attacker and defender. You see what the army is across from you, and then each of you, attacker and then defender, picks your battle regiment and then your artifact. And so you get to see what you're facing before you make that pick. I think it works well, right? It works really well. I don't think it takes any additional time, really. I don't think it has any negative consequences. I think that would be really good. If it works in Spearhead, which is an amazing game system, I think we could see it working in the main game. Any negatives you see?
The one negative I could see is maybe lore-wise. It's not like an army would be would look at an enemy army, and bring every artifact they have to the battlefield and say, "We're only using this one. Get the rest out."
So when it comes to lore-wise, I think I agree with you when it comes to battle regiments. Because the battle regiments really do, it's like, oh, I'm the Varangard regiment because I have so much Varangard, right? So you wouldn't look across the army and say, oops, Varangard, today you're the Dark Oath people, right?
Yeah.
But with artifacts, in my mind, it makes a little bit more sense because I could see, all right, the Slaves of Darkness camp, they see on the horizon Caradron coming. So they run to their little shack, throw open the chest, and grab the thing that's going to help them. And then they go and meet them on the field of battle. Because realistically, when you're fighting these armies, first of all, they're not really army sized. They're more like skirmish force size. Not skirmish in the game sense, because that's like 8 models. But skirmish in the sense of if that number of troops was fighting that number of troops, it would be a skirmish. It wouldn't be a major battle like Battle of the Bulge or something like that, right?
Now I want to collect enough iron just to do that with the Stormcast.
Yeah, it'd be huge.
Dad, you have done this to me.
But I feel like that makes sense, right? You see them coming, you run, you grab your thing, and then you meet them on the field of battle. So I could totally see lore-wise artifacts fitting right in. Battle regiments, I do think it might be harder, and maybe for narrative games, you would have to just choose that in advance, right? As part of the narrative cycle. But I think at least for artifacts, it still makes sense to choose at the table.
Yeah, I could see that.
Any other downsides?
No.
No. So yeah, I was trying to think of downsides because I'm trying to think what would be bad about it. Here's the only things I can think of. Does it take extra time? Because now you got somebody who sees your army and then they hem and they haw and they think, which artifact do I want to bring? One, I think that after you play a little bit, that's not going to be that big of an issue. And I also think that with experience, it's going to be fine. And if you were playing locally or with friends or whatever, not at a tournament, you can just tell your friend, oh, by the way, I'm bringing Stormcast.
Yeah.
And then they can hem and haw the day before, and then when you get to the table, they'll know, right? Yeah. Other negative about it is I think actually even with this, although it would be better, right now, I think, what does the indexes have? Like 3 artifacts to choose from? 4?
I think they gave you all of them.
I don't think it's 6. I would like to see, I think it would work better with more artifacts. I don't think I'd want to see, that many more than 6, actually, because then it gets to the point where it's just too much.
Because I think Islanders only have 3.
They only have 3?
They don't have that many.
So I think expanding that would be good, because if you only have 2 to pick from, then whether you pick at the table or not doesn't make that big of a difference. But if you have 6, it makes more of a difference. So the more artifacts you have, the bigger difference it makes. But other than that, it's really hard for me to think of a reason why it would not be good. Because I just feel like it would give you you'd feel like you had a little bit of a sideboard so that you could make changes on the fly. And it would make all those selections more meaningful. Any other thoughts?
Nope.
Should we start playing that way? Should we start playing that way? Picking our artifacts at the table?
No.
No. Okay.
We can't break the rules.
I guess we're going to keep playing rules as intended. But let us know in the comments below, what do you think? Is there some big downside that we're missing? Is there a reason why we shouldn't be picking artifacts at the table? Or...
because orcs don't think like that.
Oh, because orcs don't do it that way. Or is this like the best thing ever and they should implement it right away? This has been another episode of Battle Ready.
Wow!
Thanks so much for watching.